What happens when a manufacturing and technology company with 24,000 employees has to change the way that they monitor their products? Well, that's what we're going to be exploring today in the Data Radio Show. Hello there, and welcome to this week's episode of the Data Radio Show. We're going to be taking another look back at the event that we held in Melbourne, taking another look at a case study again from Tim and Lorenz. This one, taking a look at a client of theirs that was a leading technology and manufacturing company. They had 24,000 employees across the organization, and they had a bit of a mix of software that they were using. It was sort of 1% industrial software and automation, and they found that 92% of all Fortune 500 companies used other sorts of software. So they had to go in and find new ways of being able to monitor the products, which was a really fascinating engagement for them, really. So I'm going to have a jump over to that in a second, but before we do that, make sure you hit that like button, the share for the video button, or subscribe to the channel to keep getting updates. All right, now let's jump over to Tim and Lorenz.
One is about, in general, the manufacturing industry, but I would say like it's a subsidiary where we got engaged, and the subsidiary is actually doing some digital solution stuff. So if I maybe talk about the client a bit, it's like we have this one big corporation. This big corporation is actually in the manufacturing business. They deliver factories, host factories to their clients, and they ship out these factories and machines with a lot of IoT devices and sensors integrated. And then they offer to actually analyze this data for the client and send back like any reports, analysis, stuff like that. And this part of analyzing the sensor data, that is part of the subsidiary where we got engaged. So the subsidiary of this manufacturing client was actually our client, but that helps to understand the business case. And the specific manufacturing company is globally clean, and the client that we talk about is actually delivering the smart solutions. And what we actually have here is, in this subsidiary, we have around 25,000 employees. I think the parent organization has like 100,000 employees. And this is actually the number one in industrial software and automation. And I even found out that 92% of all Fortune 500 companies use the software. So you can imagine this is, on the one hand side, it's a historic organization. So they shipped out factories and machines 50 years ago. And at some point they started adding like sensors. So you will have, you're going to see it in the, you're going to see it in the challenges. You will have a couple of different heterogeneous source systems aging from various different types, right? So a source from 2000 or a sensor from 2000 delivers completely different data than if you build some modern sensors into the machines, right? On the other hand, you have thousands of machines and factories shipped out, right? So you will have a higher volume of data coming in, and you or the client needs to deliver products to various different end consumers. So that's the big overall setup here. And why did the client engage us or seek for help overall? Yeah, the number one thing for them was they wanted to keep track of the products, meaning the machines and factories that they delivered. So they would use the sensor data to actually get some feedback of how good are the machines working, are they having any issues in producing stuff, because they want to be able, in the end, to ensure that the stuff that they deliver meets the high quality standards, and to also keep down or keep low the maintenance costs. Right? If you can see, the machine is going to break down in a couple of years because some part is maybe like on the way to fail. And if you can see that earlier, that obviously helps your client in keeping their maintenance costs low. And a final thing that they wanted to do, they wanted to customize what they are offering to their existing clients based on what they know from this sensor data that they have, right? So maybe they see that the factories of client A, they are always at maximum producing capacity, then it might make sense to suggest them to buy another factory, right? Because they might have a need for that. So those were the three goals, or the three main goals, to actually think about, hey, we need to change something here, because what we do right now isn't really working. And the challenges that they have mainly come out what I already said. So one big thing was here, it's a long history of producing data and consuming data in this organization. And what they didn't have, although they had this high volume of data, were any kind of data quality processes. So they had numerous sources of data, numerous formats of data, and everything that they had was yeah, I mean, you know it, if you don't do anything about the data, the quality is almost always too good. And if you have poor data, it's going to be hard to deliver any reports that you can actually trust. Another thing is, as I said, in heterogeneous sources, you have multiple different source systems, you have multiple types of sources, data formats coming from all across the world back to you, and you want, for some global analysis, want to combine them all back together and see how they interfere with each other, right? So that's a big challenge in this case. And then, due to all this high volume and high velocity of data, they do have performance issues, of course, and scalability issues. And that were basically the drivers or the obstacles that you needed to encounter here and best case solve, right? So this is a project I think we got engaged in 2 years ago, roughly. We're still engaged in actively working in this. So it's, I would say, up and running project where we still have the client. But of course, we already had this solution. We're not there since 2 years searching for a solution, but we already implemented a solution. The one big thing here, of course, is data streaming. We have a lot of sensors around in the facilities that produce data in real time, and they want to be able to consume it in real time, to analyze it in real time. And what we did now as a big change to what they did before, we decouple the data storage and the data transformation. So we have Kafka streaming here into Snowflake, directly inserting into the raw data vault. We actually have, don't want to go too technical here, but we have all those different source systems actually sharing one Kafka stream. And if we have a look at the data, or if we get the data, we don't know yet what kind of data this is. So we need to have a lot of transformations in here to be actually able to analyze something and to get some real outcomes. And that's why it was important to cut off those 2 steps of storing the data and analyzing the data to just reduce the dependencies that we have and to increase the volume, the speed of working with the data. So that was the big overall thing that we implemented here, a good Kafka streaming into a big Snowflake instance. Right? This is a lot of data that we need to consume.
Straight into raw tables.
Yes, straight into raw tables. Right. I mean, that's like the main part. We also have like on the backup side, we do like PSA, but for analysis, we directly stream it into, in this case, only to like one splice links. Yeah, then we have automation. We implemented dbt Cloud and our dbt package data was for dbt just to implement and enable standardized processes. And this just really helps speeding up the development process. Like maybe the parent organization rolled out a new type of factory, and as soon as they ship it, they want to be able to provide analysis. So the development team needs to be able to adapt really fast and need to be able to create new analyses based on this new data as soon as possible. So it was really important here to create, I mean, it's always important to create an automated and standardized environment. And of course, the last component here is data 2.0. We heard about it already. It really serves as a big component and a big key role in providing a sustainable foundation of data. And this is what we used here as well. I mean, you're going to see data vault in all of our projects that we presented. That was really helping here, especially if you think about parallel loading and parallel processing. Data vault, with the way the data is actually structured, it's very easy to load stuff in parallel and to avoid the dependencies that the client had before. Yeah, and data vault, of course, also gives you a good framework to handle all the data quality issues that they have, right? You can all do it in the business world without affecting the actual storage and consumption of it. But this is not what the client wants, right? They don't come to us and say, hey, we want data vault and we want automation. And in the end, they're not going to say, hey, we've got automation, we're happy. But they want like business outcomes, right? And that's what we got here as well. So the maintenance and production costs were actually reduced. I mean, I can't say the numbers here, but they're highly reduced because they had proper real-time analysis of what their machines did in the real world, right? Then they were able to make decisions which are based on trusted data, because they now have data quality raised to a limit where you can really trust what you might make of decisions. Christoph talked about intuition in the beginning. and now they could really base their decisions on real numbers, right? And what they also were able to, what they wanted to provide these custom offers. They knew what their customers needed. I mean, most likely the customers didn't even know what they needed, but they could tell them based on the data that they got, right? So there was really all the goals that they wanted, they were met. We're still in there because the project grows over time and the data that they need to absorb and the business cases that open up. So this is where we're constantly helping that when we grow to grow. Yes, that was the first client that I'm going to present. Do you have any questions for that? No, perfect. And then I'm going to talk about the last client for today. It's the heavy plate industry, and we actually helped this specific client implementing their whole new data 2.0 platform. And Lorenz told about the ages of his clients, and I can definitely beat this one because this client, I mean, steel industry is already around for some time, and this particular client is operating since the 1680s. So it's been around. That's some time. Yeah. Yeah, true. So this specific client is the global leader in production of high quality steelworks. You can basically find their products in all construction works, offshore projects, critical infrastructure projects all around the world. Eiffel Tower as well. Is it? Is it not? I'm not sure. It could be. The factories of this client, they actually produce more than 1.8 million tons of steel per year. So that's quite some steel. You can imagine quite some factories involved, quite some partners along the value chain. And this is like the client that we were engaged in is, again, like in this case, it's the parent organization. They have a lot of subsidiaries handling multiple parts of the value chain. But we are now here involved at the top level, handling the global challenges. Yeah, I already told you it's in operation since the 1680s. It now has roughly 6,000 employees. It's not that much, to be honest. But it's mainly located in Germany. And in the specific region in Germany, the Saarland, maybe you heard of it, it basically is a big role and a big employer because it really contributes to the industrial area in this specific region. Saarland is the smallest Bundesland or state, the smallest state in Germany. So you can imagine that an employer with 6,000 employees, everybody knows that, right? So this is a big local organization. They wanted a couple of things. So as I told you, they have partners and subsidiaries involved in almost all steps of creating steel, which is a complex process. And if you have many partners involved and many handover points, it's very likely that there are some inefficiencies. I mean, you will always find inefficiencies. And one of the big goals here was to get a global picture of what is happening from the beginning to the end to identify all those inefficiencies. If you find them and if you can then erase them, this gives you a huge competitive market, right? Yeah, then real-time monitoring of the quality of what they actually provide. So you can imagine as sooner as you see flaws in the product quality, the cheaper it gets to fix those quality issues, right? So it all comes down to the money, right? As I said, they have many different companies. They also acquire new companies over time. And they have, of course, the companies had data before, right? So they have a lot of, again, multiple source systems that don't have the same data for it, but they want to be able, again, to provide some kind of global analysis. And for that, they need to get back all the data and make it actually comparable. So that's, again, a big goal to actually give you you want to be able to make decisions and you want to know the numbers of your whole organization. And then last but not least, because they have all these companies and subsidiaries, they also have, I would say, power users scattered across all those existing companies. And that's why they want to build a self-service base where people can run the ad hoc or their ad hoc analysis based on trusted data, data that gives them reliable outcomes every time. So a lot of goals here. Yeah.
So just curious, what were the types of data business like this? Like, was there any and visual recognition, for instance.
Yeah, they have stuff like that. They have images of the production lines, for example, which need to be handled. They have sensor data coming in as JSONs or whatever. But they also have classic stuff like financial numbers, HR data. But yeah, as you can see, it's basically everything that you can imagine occurs in such an environment.
So I can imagine that visual recognition is probably the best way of trying to figure out the quality of the steel.
Yes, I mean I'm not that into steel, but I would assume that it will strongly depend on visuals, but the visuals are not that trustworthy without any numbers belonging to them, right? So I guess it's a combination of the sensor data giving the actual numbers and quality.
Yeah, I think they're making some tests on the steel as well.
Yeah, hardness test.
Yeah.
Yeah, so many goals here. So the project ended, but I'm not sure. I think we were engaged a couple of years. So you can see a lot of goals. So a lot of work to be done. The solution that we came up with, it was on the one hand, of course, again, data vault. Data vault really helped here to get all those source data and source systems back together and make them comparable. We integrated them. We had, for example, a product hub fed by more than 30 source systems because they all share the same semantic meaning of a product, right? So that's very, I would say, a standardized way to bring back all those different source systems that we have. Then again, we have automation. In this case, we used WhereScape, both read and read. So we did the modeling, data modeling in WhereScape, and the actual physical implementation of data vault within WhereScape. And with this, it was just it still is a sustainable framework that really helps growing and scaling over time while being audited. And last but not least, this client was particular, for him it was particularly important that we enabled them to jump off what we did, right? So what we did here was a lot of training sessions, workshops to get all the team that had to work with this platform in the future to be able to maintain it, to enhance it in the future. So it was a big part here was also training and enablement. And the results in this specific case, they were able, so if like a customer, end consumer goes to the client, orders steel, I don't know, they are now able to see the real-time status of that order, and they could be shown, for example, hey, 20% of your steel is already in production right now, the other 80% is still being mined, I don't know, but that's what they can now provide to their customers, which is again a big advantage on the market, right? If you're the client, or in this case the consumer, this is great because you can now rely on the order status of the product that you actually ordered at this specific client. The data of all the source systems is now comparable. So if you think about financial KPIs, they are now valid for all companies that's part of this organization, which is again a big advantage. And what they were able to do is they were allowing people to do those ad hoc analysis. And there are some cases where these ad hoc analysis they led to some new research projects within the company, which were not able before. I mean, that was unimaginable in the old situation. So now they really have this trusted data foundation where if they find something or if they had some insights on this foundation, they're now able to justify investments into research based on this findings. Because the trust in the data foundation is now like really high. Yeah, so those were total four clients. I think, to be honest, most of our clients are not in the manufacturing industry. So we are not engaged in finance. So we are in the finance project right now. Insurance, banking, a lot like that. But if we come across projects like these, I personally like them more because it's more, I would say, touchable might be not the right word, but you can relate more to what you're doing. It's not just numbers, but it's actually something physical behind what you do every day, right? So, great projects. And from those projects, but also with all the other projects that we have, which are not in the manufacturing industry, we basically put it back down to some conclusions, which are valid for, I would say, every industry where data modernization is the topic. The first one, of course, I have to say this, is that data vault is one way and a valid and a good way of being a core of the data platform. With scalability, auditability, automation, all the stuff really helps you to focus on on generating business value. So if you're really in a spot where you think about how to model the data vault definitely is a good option. It can serve you in all ways. Then data quality, of course, is always important. We'll talk about data quality today. Garbage in, garbage out is valid for almost everything when you work with data. And of course, it's important to apply it in the right layer. And if you have data vault in place, but also if you don't have data vault in place, it's always important to keep it up as high as possible. If you produce reports based on data that has a low data quality, nobody's going to trust it.
Please don't put it in a raw vault.
Yeah, please don't put your data quality adjustment in the raw vault. It's true. But it's always important. But I mean, that's no news. Then third one, automation is king. So if you have tasks that are repetitive, then you should automate them, right? So there's no need for you developers to spend hours and hours of copying code from A to B. There's various tools out there. Some of them are free. Most of them are
Iris. I look at really good too.
You don't have to work your ass off on stuff that bores your developers, right? Put your developers on stuff that's fun. And creating the 50 hubs by scratch, that's not fun. That's not very helpful, right? It's only going to harm you yet. And then, but we can't say enough is don't start from scratch. That's valid for automation, but that's also valid for data modeling. You don't need to try and find your own way of modeling the data. There are standards out there. At least check them out. We see many organizations that ignore everything that's on the market. If it's open source data formats, if it's tools, we'll always find someone who thinks, oh no, there's 50 tools out there. We spent a lot of money in building the right tool, but we can do it better. If I put my 10 developers on building their own automation tool, it's definitely going to be better. I would say 99% that's not the case in the end. So at least have an open eye and check if there's anything on the market, any templates, whatever.
And like data modeling as well. You're not the only bank that builds a data model. There are some ideas out there. Get some inspiration at least.
Yeah.
Don't copy, but inspiration.
This is all
that's like the right word. Yeah. Then you can copy. Yeah. True.
And just a bit of add. But what we saw in the past is you should, if you want to implement and use skills in your team that are non-existent right now, like you want to do data vault, but you don't have a clue about data vault in your team, it makes sense to get external support. It's just more efficient than training all the people from scratch or letting them try it out without prior knowledge. That's even on the money side, it's going to be more efficient to get someone coming in who already has the knowledge. And if you found a good solution partner, he's willing to enable your team and he's not going to rip you off. Yes, please.
Or even just check what they're doing. They're doing it the correct way.
Like a reviewer, like a third party that checks what you're doing, can give you some independent feedback. That's always a good idea. Yeah, and then last but not least, we brought a gift. Sandra put it in a suitcase. Christoph already teased it. It's the data vault N.
Already.
You've already given it. Christoph spoiled it. Yeah. I mean, everyone who's interested already got one, but you can also scan the QR code to view it online. Maybe you want to save it to some of your colleagues, which are not that familiar with data vault. It's a great, I would say, it's easier to read than the existing very thick data vault Bible. And I would say it has everything that you need to know to work with data.
To start, at least.
Yeah.
Available for free, but €100 in shipping and packaging.
Basically, yes.
Hey, thanks for checking out this week's episode of the Data Radio Show. And if you're over in London at the moment at the meeting that's happening there with Coalesce, I hope you're enjoying everything. I'm told the food's really good. They do really good food at the London meeting, and I'm kind of gutted I can't get there for that because I do like me some good food. Anyway, make sure you've hit that like button if you haven't already, or make sure that you are subscribing to the channel to get updates. Until next time, live long, prosper, be one with the Force, and we will catch you all next time.